Hold on, I have to sweep my too long bangs to the side before we start. I'm Ruby Carr, and this is the story of Fall Out Boy, Sugar, We're Going Down.
You know the songs.
Just making people feel something.
It's been a pleasure to work on this song with her.
But do you know the history?
It's a struggle making any kind of record.
I don't always have the direction or concept.
This is Encore, an in-depth look at the stories behind the music. Here's iHeartRadio's Ruby Carr.
The many faces of pop punk. Here on Encore, we've explored a wide range of songs that fall under the genre's umbrella, from the sounds of Green Day's rock opera, political thriller, American Idiot, to Sum 41's metal-worshipping Jackass-inspired Fat Lip, to Avril Lavigne's quirky and jealousy-ridden hand-clapping Girlfriend. Pop punk is a big old tree with a whole lot of branches. In 2005, mainstream pop punk tied its wagon a lot closer to the traditional sounds of rock and roll, with heavy guitars and stadium-like bravado that kept the rock radio airwaves happy, that's for sure. Emo, the emotional side of pop punk, was usually relegated to the sounds of the underground. The scene was filled with bands across North America that were a little pop, a little punk, a little goth, and honestly, a little twee. If you were a band having deep, overdramatic feelings about life, love, and fitting in, and treated music as if it was your own personal confessional for all of the above, that was fine. You'd probably find yourself a fan base, but you wouldn't necessarily find yourself a hit. And it goes without saying that the same goes for emo music's raging older brother, screamo. You know, emo music, but with screams. The distillation of the agony and rage that came with such despairing musical thoughts often turned mainstream audiences off, quite frankly because the sound was seen as too loud, too dramatic, and nowhere near melodic enough. With that being said, I'm sure Canada's greatest screamo export, Alexis on Fire, would like a word on this. Coalescing with the rise of internet culture at the time, emo and screamo bands were massively popular on MySpace, with file sharing doing a lot of the word-of-mouth heavy lifting, both virtually and in real life. In a time where everyone was making CD mixes, you could easily sneak a legally or otherwise obtained MP3 of your favorite emo band on a custom curated disc, and it started to influence culture at large. And come on, don't act like you didn't have burned CDs in your car with your favorite emo lyric written on it in Sharpie, or like Kelsey's Mix with 3 X's. Now, while a ton of emo bands eventually broke through, perhaps the very first of their kind was Fall Out Boy. And while they started off like many other subculture sweethearts of the era, in just a few short years, they would become one of the hottest bands in the world. Formed in the suburbs of Chicago in 2001, Fall Out Boy was founded originally by songwriter and bassist Pete Wentz and guitarist Joe Troman. The 22-year-old Wentz was making his name a bit of a local scene-stir celebrity, trying his hand at and getting notoriety in punk-adjacent projects in the hardcore and metalcore scenes before growing tired of his early bands and teaming up with Troman to form a yet-to-be-named pop-punk side project that he hoped would be a bit more straightforward and a bit more fun. Patrick Stump would join the band soon thereafter, originally hoping to audition to be the band's drummer. Stump was the son of a folk singer and had way fewer ties to the local emo scene than Joe or Pete, preferring jazz, soul, or quirky alt-pop stars like Elvis Costello. Before Stump's audition, Troman listened to some acoustic demos that Patrick had uploaded to his mp3.com page and encouraged him to bring his guitar along to the tryout to also audition for a lead singer role. After playing a few songs from Emo God's Saves the Day's influential record Through Being Cool, both Wentz and Troman agreed they had found their voice. Still technically without a name, Fall Out Boy would court eventual drummer Andy Hurley to join the group early on, but he would hold out on the guys for the better part of 2 years before joining, but we'll get to that. After months of arguing over band names, including pretentiously long ones that would eventually become the band's calling card in their song titles, the band would tentatively settle on the tongue-in-cheek Simpsons reference Fall Out Boy for a university show that also featured an early project of fellow Chicagoan Tim from Rise Against. As legend has it, Wentz actually took the stage and introduced his band as whatever pretentious idea he was lobbying for, but when a fan in the crowd yelled out that, you're Fall Out Boy. The name caught the ear of Tim, who thanked Fall Out Boy later on in the night for their set. Wentz, Stump, and Troman idolized Tim, and so if it was good enough for him, it was finally good enough for them, and the name stuck. Now, quick side note, I had the pleasure of interviewing Tim and Rise Against earlier this year, and it turns out Rise Against also had some tragically bad band names before settling on Rise Against. It's too good. You can watch that interview, and you should watch that interview on the iHeartRadio Canada YouTube channel. It was so much fun. I just love those guys. And our set will give you some home decor inspo. Fall Out Boy's first EP, Fall Out Boy's Evening Out With Your Girlfriend, was recorded in 2002 for indie label Uprising Records. The album was low budget, low effort, and would be shelved for quite some time by Uprising, which in all honesty suited Fall Out Boy, who still didn't have a permanent drummer and didn't love the output on the album. Soon after recording Girlfriend, the band would travel to Madison, Wisconsin to record some songs to use as demos on split 7-inch EPs with fellow scene stalwarts 504 Plan. Sean O'Keefe, who was engineering the project, suggested that the still drummerless Fall Out Boy recruit Andy Hurley to fill in on drums for the project, and this time Hurley agreed, traveling from Chicago to Madison to record his parts. The EP never saw the light of day, but the recording sessions proved fruitful. Hurley, as a drummer, and O'Keefe, as a producer-engineer, had clear chemistry with Fall Out Boy, transforming their sound and growing the group into a more professional-sounding outfit. Hurley would join Fall Out Boy on a mini-tour with band Spitalfield, and O'Keefe agreed to record more music with the group to try and finally attract some interest from more established labels. The band would leave Uprising Records, secure Hurley's permanent services, find themselves a manager, and begin negotiations with a variety of punk-leaning labels before getting a cold call from a relatively unknown label called Fueled by Ramen. And yes, if that name sounds familiar, Fueled by Ramen is the label Fun would sign with about a decade later, as we discussed earlier this season. Listen to that episode too if you haven't already. The label has had plenty of success over the years, but its success would truly start to ramp up when they would eventually sign Fall Out Boy and release what most fans consider their real first album. Around the same time of the Ramen negotiations, in what feels like a bizarre turn of events, Fall Out Boy would also receive a call from the world-famous Island Records, who had an interesting proposition for the band. Island offered to incubate Fall Out Boy by funding their move to Fueled by Ramen and letting the rival label release Fall Out Boy's debut with far lower stakes than if the young band signed for a major label right out of the gate. If they liked what they heard and thought that they had something worth investing in, they'd transition the young punks to Island and put them on the path to world domination. Sounds simple, right? Well, yeah, it wasn't. Now on Fueled by Ramen, Fall Out Boy reunited with Sean O'Keefe back in Wisconsin to record Take This to Your Grave, their proper debut album, which they wrote in about 9 days. With $40,000 invested from Papa label Island Records and a clear vision to create something as seamless as the aforementioned Save the Days through Being Cool, and plenty of ideas to work with, from the outside, it all looked pretty straightforward. But the first issue that plagued the band is a fairly obvious one that I've been waiting for the right moment to bring up. You see, Fall Out Boy, for all intents and purposes, was a Pete Wentz band, but Patrick Stump was the lead singer and literal voice of the band. When Stump joined the group, he quickly took over a majority of the lyric writing duties from Pete, and although he was constantly collaborating with Wentz on things like melody and song structure, more often than not, the two clashed over lyrical content. The two de facto band leaders had actually already almost fallen out before signing with Fueled by Ramen and getting serious about their music. But now, with the stakes higher than ever, there was no hiding their growing resentment. The band would admit to alternative press writer Ryan Downey in 2013 that the recording of Take This to Your Grave was mired by arguments. Stump confessed that he was an artsy-fartsy dude who didn't want to be in a pop-punk band, and that he didn't take his lyricism for Fall Out Boy all too seriously back then. Wentz, on the other hand, who had once had his own reservations about what Fall Out Boy even could become, had recommitted himself to his band in a major way and wanted every lyric on the album to be just perfect, or more specifically, what his idea of perfect was. Wentz would soon begin criticizing and picking apart Stump's lyrics to the point where Stump would write the song, scrap his lyrics, then attempt to fit Wentz's lyrics where his were. Stump was more concerned with the melodies, including the rhythm, syncopation, and alliteration of words, while Wentz felt none of it mattered if the lyrics themselves lacked meaning. Allegedly fighting all the way down to the syllable. The band would recall, "We fought for 9 days straight, all while not sleeping and smelling like shit. It was one long argument, but I think some of the best moments are the result of that." With O'Keefe adding, "They would go through 10 revisions for one song. I thought I was going to lose my mind with both of them." But eventually, the album was done, up to spec to what everyone in the band was comfortable with, and ready for a May 2003 release, with a considerable amount of hype. Which is when Fall Out Boy were confronted with problem number 2. Despite the band themselves thinking it was, quote, a giant piece of garbage, Fall Out Boy technically already had a debut album, recorded, produced, and waiting for a release, 2002's Evening Out With Your Girlfriend. Yes, the band's original Uprising Records EP, according to the label's owner, was always being primed for release, and Fall Out Boy just got too popular before they had a chance to release it. But wouldn't you know it, a mere 2 months before Take This to Your Grave dropped in March 2003, Uprising Records took their chance and released their secret weapon, very much against Fall Out Boy's wishes. Legally, there wasn't much anyone could do to stop the release, but luckily the albums shared just one track, Calm Before the Storm, so there was very little creative overlap. As you might expect, the messy Uprising release pretty much stumbled out of the gate. The label didn't really have the means to properly promote it, and since the band themselves disowned it, it's not like they were going to give it any love publicly. So while some fans may have been confused, the Fall Out Boy project lost little to no steam. Take This to Your Grave, on the other hand, did wonders for Fall Out Boy's career, with AllMusic calling the album spectacular and a smart collection of emo-influenced pop-punk tunes. Alternative press raved even harder for the album, going as far as saying, "The album shines so brightly at times you have to look really hard to find the imperfections." Even Rolling Stone, who were far more critical of the album, admitted Fall Out Boy shows a knack for mixing caffeinated up-tempo tunes with sensitive, tortured lyrics, before adding, "Overall, it's the run-of-the-mill stuff you'd hear from just about any other Warped Tour act." Speaking of the Warped Tour, like many pop-punk powerhouses before them, Fall Out Boy joined the iconic tour for 5 dates in 2004. The band was so popular on their respective stops, the stage collapsed when they were only 3 songs in due to the massive crowd. This was a common occurrence, according to Wentz, who claimed the band was banned from multiple venues due to the riot-like crowds that would rush their stage shows. With the fever for Fall Out Boy at an all-time high, Island Records decided to pull the trigger, and from that moment on, Fall Out Boy was fucked. That's F-U-C-T, fucked. You'll get it in a second. Now Island record recording artist Fall Out Boy entered the studio in late 2004 with producer Neil Avron. As legend has it, Fall Out Boy were actually having quite a bit of difficulty securing the services of an industry-leading record producer, but it was hearing unpolished melodies of what would eventually become Sugar We're Going Down that eventually sealed the deal with Neil. Avron, who had worked with artists like Everclear, Newfound Glory, and Yellowcard, was open to the challenge of creating a pop-punk masterpiece that would stay true to the band's style, but really break through into the mainstream. Eventually titled From Under the Cork Tree, inspired by a 1936 children's book and eventual 2017 film starring John Cena, about a fighter bull that doesn't want to fight called The Story of Ferdinand. On the obscure title, with the accidentally obscene acronym FUCT, Wentz would say that it represented where Fall Out Boy were in their career, noting, "It's like you could be the giant bull, but you don't have to take part in everything that's going on. You could live under the cork tree and live out your days, I guess." To be honest with you, I still don't fully get the link. The first order of business for Fall Out Boy was to create clear delineations between who exactly was responsible for what when it came to the songwriting for Cork Tree. After plenty of back and forth, it basically shook down like this. Patrick Stump would write the music, and Pete Wentz would write the lyrics. No questions asked. Stump would rather diplomatically explain this decision to Much.
I don't know. It's one of those things where I think everybody focuses on their strengths. Or when everybody focuses on their strengths, you get better stuff done, like flowers randomly show out of pockets. And so instead of me trying to make lyrics that aren't any good, I'm going to focus on music and he's going to focus exclusively on lyrics and whatever. You know what I mean? Like, and we're all going to focus on our strengths and then it's going to be a better product.
Admittedly, while this did help keep egos in check, it also created what sounds like a lot more work for the band. As MTV profiled in an aptly titled 2004 article, Fall Out Boy's sound has changed, but the weirdly long song titles remain, writing, "When they started writing new songs, Fall Out Boy knew exactly what they didn't want to sound like, but they weren't exactly sure what they did want. In fact, just 2 weeks before they started recording, they scrapped 10 songs and wrote 8 more, including the first single, Sugar We're Going Down." Now on a major label with pop stardom in sight, Fall Out Boy wanted to enhance their sound to set them apart from their underground emo contemporaries. While Take This to Your Grave was very much the most promising pop-punk emo record to come out of the scene, From Under the Cork Tree needed to transcend the very genre that birthed it. Wentz would tell MTV, "A lot of bands in the scene are about the competition rather than the music. They're all trying to get famous, like Taking Back Sunday or something. And they don't really hold their weight. A lot of that music oversaturates the listener and waters down the bands that are doing it for real. So we chose not to compete and decided to do something different." One thing the band didn't do differently was change the way they titled their songs. Of the 13 songs on the record, at least 7 of them are incredibly verbosely titled. Some favorites include Track 1. Our lawyer made us change the name of this song so we wouldn't get sued. Track 9. Champagne for my real friends, real pain for my sham friends. Track 10. I slept with someone in Fall Out Boy and all I got was this stupid song written about me. And of course, track 11 and eventual single, A Little Less 16 Candles, A Little More Touch Me. Sure, it was a bit cringy and eventually poked fun at by fans and critics alike, but honestly, it was part of the charm. Behind the titles were emotionally fraught songs of love, loss, self-loathing, cynicism, and relatably maudlin subject matter, all tied up in pop-punk melodies that were not only catchy, but borderline gleeful sounding. The entire record was emo music personified, treading the line between caring and creepy, heartfelt and hopeless, translating They Just Don't Understand into This Is My Favorite Band. On Sophomore Slump or Comeback of the Year, for example, Wentz's Stump sang lyrics proudly proclaim, "We're the therapists pumping through your speakers, delivering just what you need." And their fans agreed. Admittedly, the expression of themselves through their lyrics were not always the healthiest of coping strategies, with the band admitting to much.
Now, a little thing, you said that you're more comfortable writing to 3 million people than you are having a close, personal conversation with someone, which I find interesting. I talk to a lot of artists like that feel that they can put themselves out through their lyrics instead of talking to people that they're close to.
Yeah, I think it's kind of weird. It's probably something sometimes people feel is attractive, but I think it's kind of a psychosis that you should probably talk to a doctor about.
Oh, come on.
Honestly.
No, it's a good thing because you get your emotions.
No, because I think it's you kind of portray yourself as a distinctly unlikable person, and for some reason people yell for you to come outside. But if they read the lyrics, it's you're distinctly unlikable.
Oh, you're very likable, Pete. You're all very likable.
For Wentz, Sugar We're Going Down was always intended to be the kind of centerpiece of the album. The aforementioned juxtaposition of happy, sweet-sounding melodies with dark, wallowing lyricism is found all over the track, with Wentz telling Rolling Stone, "I wrote the lyrics in Chicago. I was with my dad, and we were listening to the old music where they'd always say sugar and honey, stuff like that. I was like, why doesn't anyone do that anymore?" The kind of doomed yet still fighting nature of the song was relatable, catchy as hell, and captured the moment of the bubbling under emo scene in the most commercially viable way since Blink-182 broke through with All the Small Things. One lyric in Sugar that raised a few eyebrows was the final line of each refrain. I think you know the one. "I'll be your number one with a bullet, loaded God complex, cock it and pull it." On the feisty wordplay, the band told much.
But to me, the chorus was the State of the Union of Fall Out Boy at the time. It's kind of where we were and what people were going to be saying about us a year from there, I guess. I don't know. I'm really excited because when we were recording that song, our record label showed up, some people from it, and were like, there's no way a song with the lyric Loaded Guy Complex could ever do well, and no one's ever going to care about this song. You should consider changing the lyrics. And I just wanted to thank our fans everywhere for proving them wrong. That's awesome.
That's great. That's good that you didn't have to change.
While the label didn't make them censor the lyric, somewhere Wheatus is just shaking their fist at the sky, everyone involved was a little bit worried that the line might come off too wordy and self-serving for even an emo song. Stump, however, had a solution for that. Perhaps born out of the countless fights they had over the ghosts of lyrics past, he decided to kind of slur the Wentz-penned words to make them sound better. He told Rolling Stone, "I was trying to do a straight punk song for fun, and I saw those lyrics and just kind of barked them out. But there was something about the rhythm of it where I was like, that actually might be too good for just a shitty punk song." While the actual lyric itself became instantly iconic, Taylor Swift told Rolling Stone it's one of her favorite lyrics ever, by the way. The line also became a bit of a meme thanks to Stump's purposeful slurring. On first listen, fans could not figure out what the hell he was singing. I mean, what was it again? Here are some of the misheard renditions I found online. "I'll be your number one with a bullet, a Mardi Gras contest, cork it and fill it." Or, "I'll be your number one with a bullet, a RoboCop contest, chock full of mullet." And of course, "I'll be your number one with a bullet, a loaded gun complex stuck in the pudding." And the lyrics weren't the only quirky aspect of Sugar We're Going Down. The music video was quite the eyebrow raiser as well. If you've ever seen the Matt Lenski directed video, you are in for a surreal treat or nightmare, I'm not sure. The video tells the story of an awkward young lad who's growing up in a small town looking for love and happiness, but he has antlers. We don't know why, he just does. We see him bullied by school children before a sweet young lady gets her kite all tangled up in his horns. The two develop crushes on each other, and Antler Boy and his sweetie pie do cutesy, wholesome things all around town. That is until Antler Girl's bigoted anti-antler dad catches wind and makes it his mission to hunt our protagonist like a deer. At the last second, with a crossbow cocked at our hero, the girl's father gets hit by a car, saving Antler Boy from impending doom. In the accident, the father's shoes get blown clean off, and it is revealed that this no-good papa has hooves for feet. The irony, the tragedy. In the end, they all survive, teaching us a valuable lesson? Fall Out Boy recognized that tying the video to the narrative of the song was a bit of a stretch, but enjoyed the Wes Anderson-esque quirkiness of it all. As we've mentioned countless times on Encore, when it came to music videos, you really just had to be there in the early 2000s. A video that stood out could transform a song from good to great, and everyone loved the Antler Boy video. Heck, Fall Out Boy actually sell the sweater he wears in the video on their website. It's not even a particularly interesting sweater, but it's the sweater from that video, you know? People want it. Okay, now we do have to switch gears here, so just before we start this next segment, I want to give a quick heads up that it deals with topics of depression, anxiety, and suicide. So if these are topics that are triggering to you, I'm going to make sure to put a timestamp to skip past the difficult parts, okay? It truly felt like all of the stars were aligning for Fall Out Boy. They were the subject of praise from both the underground that raised them and the mainstream that were finally catching on. A true lightning in a bottle moment for a band, who admittedly were still figuring out the kinks of playing live shows night after night, and you can't really blame them. The band was less than 5 years old. With the album almost finished, Pete Wentz entered a serious bout of depression. Then, in February of 2005, just 2 months before Sugar We're Going Down hit airwaves, while suffering from self-described black clouds, Wentz found himself sitting in a Best Buy parking lot overwhelmed by his dark thoughts. The musician took a massive handful of anxiety pills and admits that while it could be defined as a suicide attempt, at the very least, it was what he called hypermedicating. Wentz would tell the UK Independent, "I just wanted to have my head shut up. I didn't really think about whether I slept or died. I was either totally anxious or totally depressed. It's particularly overwhelming when you're on the cusp of doing something very big and thinking that it will be a big flop. I was racked with self-doubt." Wentz collapsed, but would make it to a hospital and get his stomach pumped, leading to a week-long stay in the hospital to recover. He would temporarily move back in with his parents in Wilmette, Illinois, while the rest of Fall Out Boy, shocked, fulfilled touring obligations in the UK. Of Pete's absence, Joe Troman admitted that the hardship did bring the young band closer together through solidarity. We couldn't latch on to Pete, so we had to grow some balls and talk on our own on stage, he would tell Rolling Stone. Finally, as Wentz recovered and returned to the band, From Under the Cork Tree was released on May 3rd, 2005. Originally selling a respectable 68,000 copies in its first week, ranking it at number 9 on the Billboard 200, the album really hit its stride as the year came to a close, as little emo boys and girls all over America likely woke up to the sounds of Fall Out Boy on Christmas morning, as it bounced up to over 250,000 copies sold over the week of the festive period. Sugar We're Going Down would spend a resounding 42 weeks on the Billboard Hot 100, peaking at number 8 in September of 2005. What's actually kind of stunning about the song, and I admittedly only learned this in the research for this episode, is that it has been unbelievably consistent in its popularity in the 20 years of its existence. We're truly talking timeless status here. Get this. So the song went gold by January 2006, double platinum by 2009, and 4 times platinum by 2015. Then in 2016, as the recording industry switched from individual downloads as a metric to streaming equivalents, where 150 track listens is equal to 1 purchase, the song continued to grow, hitting 8 times platinum status in 2023, and then 9 times platinum status just this past August. Mainstream coverage of the album was relatively tepid at the time, with Rolling Stone admitting, even with its demented, inscrutable lyrics, Sugar We're Going Down will likely still be blasting from radios 10 years on. Respectively, however, Fall Out Boy has certainly gotten their flowers for bursting the floodgates open with Sugar We're Going Down and Cork Tree as a whole. In 2016, Rolling Stone's Brittany Spanos declared Fall Out Boy changed the course of emo punk, and pop itself with From Under the Cork Tree, which brought the scene mainstream, in a list that put the album as one of the greatest emo albums of all time. Just this year, as this episode is being written, Rolling Stone released their definitive guide to the 250 best songs of the century so far. Coming in at a respectable number 79, Sugar We're Going Down is the highest ranking emo song in the entirety of the list. After Sugar We're Going Down, Fall Out Boy would release 2 more singles off From Under the Cork Tree, the infinitely danceable Dance Dance, and A Little Less 16 Candles, A Little More Touch Me. In 2006, they'd be nominated for Best New Artist at the Grammys before roaring back quickly with 2007's Infinity on High and the thumping second single, This Ain't a Scene, It's an Arms Race. I was obsessed with that song. But the trials and tribulations of success unfortunately cracked away at the members of Fall Out Boy, and after an understated third album release, Folie à Deux, in 2009, the band would go on a 4-year hiatus. By 2013, the group reunited with Save Rock and Roll, debuting at number 1 on the Billboard chart, and a positive critical response, with Rolling Stone declaring their return to form a rather stunning renaissance. In 2015, Fall Out Boy released the sample-heavy American Psycho, also a number 1 debut, which featured their most recent top 10 Billboard Hot 100 hit, Centuries. Their 2018 album Mania would receive a Grammy nomination for Best Rock Album, and in 2023, they released their most recent album, So Much for Stardust. On the supporting tour, the band would play a surprise song every night that had more often than not never been played live before, where they finally played a song off their long-forsaken first album, performing honorable mention for the first time in more than 15 years. By the time you're listening to this, Fall Out Boy will have just released the 20th anniversary of From Under the Cork Tree, including a 3-LP version with 4 alternative versions of Sugar We're Going Down, including an instrumental version, so if you want to sing a RoboCop contest chock full of mullet, you can. I'm Ruby Carr. Thank you so much for listening to Encore and the story behind Fall Out Boy, Sugar We're Going Down.
Encore is an iHeartRadio Canada podcast. Download the free iHeartRadio app and subscribe.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming.